the dream alive. Listen. I don't want to stop. Please don't make me stop. I don't want to stop. Please don't make me stop. Please, please, please. Don't want to stop. Please don't make me stop. Hey, don't want to stop. Now if you believe, let me hear you spell it with me. S-T-O-P-P-I-N. Ain't no, 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 no. S-T-O-P-P-I-N. Say what? Ain't no, 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 no. One more. S-T-O-P-P-I-N. Ain't no, ain't no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. S-T-O-P-P-I-N. Ain't no. Come on, one more verse, y'all. Ain't no stopping us now. Ain't no stopping us now. We're on the move. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. Ain't no stopping us now. We've got to do it.
All right, Mr. Entertainment himself. Be sure to listen out for his new show at Planet Hollywood. Mr. Bill Flowers. Big shout out to Macho Boogie, on-air personality at Power 88 Weekend Blast is in the house. Yes, yes. And gospel personality Lena Love is in the house, or outside, I should say. I see DC Ryder over there in the van. DC Ryder, give it up to one of the pioneer legends when it comes to DJing in the clubs and mobile DJ systems. God bless you, brother. All right, coming up next, we have Mr. Jim Haber, and he's going to read the demands. Oh, here he is, Jim.
I'm very honored to get to do this. Part of the program, Bayard Rustin, is of great importance to me, personally and politically. Before I read the demands, and they were very important demands, it was a revolution that they were gathering for. It was a revolutionary call. It was not just about the voting rights. But first, I would like to know if anyone was at that march in 1963, please make yourself known. Raise your hand or stand up. I really want to signify, represent for anyone who was here then, or there then. Excellent, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, anyone who, I was 1 year old at the time, so I don't remember, but anyone who remembers where you were, remember something.
I know where I was.
All right, so what I want you to do is to hold some moment or some thought that had special significance for you at that time and bring that to this moment now for us, so that we all who were not there and do not remember get to bask in the essence of the power of that gathering, of that day. People who remember where they were then, thank you for sharing that with the rest of us now. Let us all take it in and move and study the day as it was. The government was opposed to this gathering happening. They had a kill switch on the mic to shut it down if they felt threatened by everyone who was gathering. It was a revolutionary moment. Bayard Rustin, who taught Martin Luther King Jr. about nonviolent campaigns. Bayard Rustin, the gay, largely written out of history, nonviolent, pacifist, World War II conscientious objector, Quaker, amazing voice, who brought the power of nonviolent campaigns to the attention of Martin Luther King Jr. in a way that amplified the power of what was already beginning. We must represent Bayard Rustin. Presente. At the beginning of the gathering in 1963, A. Philip Randolph said, "We are not a mob. We are the advanced guard of a massive moral revolution for jobs and freedom." that word revolution. As a nonviolent activist, I'm here because I run a nonprofit, Nevada Desert Experience. Our history is Franciscan and anti-nuclear. We helped stop the full-scale testing 65 miles away of nuclear weapons here, where work on weapons of mass destruction continue to this day. Our job is not done. And a significant point in 1963 was the merging strongly of the work against racism and the work against economic exploitation. That the leaders of the march saw that they could not be divorced and needed to be wed. And it was Martin Luther King Jr.'s brilliance later when he saw the third leg of the evil triplets, as he said, which was militarism. And when he said that the United States was the greatest purveyor of violence 4 years after this march, I fear he would be more dismayed today than ever. The government was afraid of the people, and they remain afraid of the people. As much as we love elements of the government, what is so revolutionary about violence? What is so revolutionary about violence? That's what I want to ask us today. The power of the people is all over the world. I wear this blue scarf in solidarity with people, young people in Afghanistan who march for freedom and against violence in Afghanistan. The Afghan Peace Volunteers. People in Syria, Egypt, all over the world who are under the gun stand up and march for freedom in a way that we take for granted here. I'm sorry, even at a lovely celebration like this, we take for granted the freedom that other people are fighting for. When people say, vote here, yes, it's important. People are cynical about voting here with cause, and yet it's important to vote. But people all over the world are dying fighting for that right to vote, and we must stand with them. The call was revolutionary, and let me move into the formal demands of that day as they were read by my hero, Bayard Rustin. Friends, this is Bayard speaking. Actually, first, A. Philip Randolph introduced him. A philosopher of nonviolent system of behavior in seeking to bring about social change for the advancement of justice and freedom and human dignity. I want to introduce now Brother Bayard Rustin, who will read the demands of the March on Washington movement. Everyone must listen to these demands. That is why we are here. And now, Bayard Rustin, Deputy Director of the March, will read the demands. Now I'm Bayard. Friends, at 5 o'clock today, the leaders whom you have heard will go to President Kennedy to carry the demands of this revolution. It is now time for you to act. I will read each demand and you will respond to it, so that when Mr. Wilkins and Dr. King and the other 8 leaders go, they are carrying with them the demands which you have given your approval to. The first demand is that we have effective civil rights legislation, no compromise, no filibuster, and that it include public accommodations, decent housing, integrated education, Fair Employment Practices Commission, and the right to vote. What do you say? I think it was more rousing for number 2, folks. Number 2. They want... Yeah. Hello. They didn't do that in 1963. They're more scared of us today than they were even then. Carrying on.
Okay, that wasn't the government. Somebody kicked the plug out over here.
That's better. That's better. We do want the government with us. We do want the government with us. Number two, they want that we demand the withholding of federal funds from all programs in which discrimination exists. What do you say? We demand that segregation be ended in every school district in the year 1963. 2013. I wrote that in parentheses. We demand the enforcement of the 14th Amendment, the reducing of congressional representation of states where citizens are disenfranchised. We need that one now. I'm going to read that one again. We demand the enforcement of the 14th Amendment, the reducing of congressional representation of states where citizens are disenfranchised. We demand an executive order banning discrimination in all housing supported by federal funds. We demand that every person in this nation, black or white, be given training and work with dignity to defeat unemployment and automation. We demand that there be an increase in the national minimum wage so that men may live in dignity. We finally demand that all of the rights that are given to any citizen be given to black men and men of every minority group, including a strong federal employment practices commission, and for women and transgender also. And now the pledge of the revolution. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Randolph will read the pledge. This is a pledge which says, our job has just begun. You pledge to return home to carry on the revolution. And after Mr. Randolph has read the pledge, I will say, do you so pledge? And you will say, I do pledge. Hey, Philip Randolph in the house.
I look good for 90-something years old. The pledge. May you stand, standing before the Lincoln Memorial on the 28th of August in the centennial year of emancipation. I affirm my complete personal commitment to the struggle for jobs and freedom for Americans. To fulfill that commitment, I pledge that I will not relax until victory is won. I pledge that I will join and support all actions undertaken in good faith in accord with the time-honored democratic tradition of nonviolent protest, of peaceful assembly and petition and redress through the courts and the legislative process. I pledge to carry the message of the march to my friends and neighbors back home and arouse them to an equal commitment and equal effort. I will march and I will write letters. I will demonstrate and I will vote. I will work to make sure that my voice and those of my brothers ring clear and determined from every corner of our land. I pledge my heart and my mind and my body unequivocally and without regard to personal sacrifice to the achievement of social peace through social justice.
How do you pledge?
I so pledge.
I so pledge. I so pledge. I so pledge. I so pledge. I so pledge.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. If you want to learn more about Bayard Rustin, come over and see me at our table over there. Thank you for this honor.
All right, give it up for Jim. Awesome. Jim Haber. All right, before I bring up to the next speaker, we're almost at the end. Thank you for holding tight. I want to give a shout out to another on there personality show host, Mr. Franklin G, for Like It Is Radio program every Friday morning. Starting in September, it will be 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. He has an hour show coming up. Also, I want to recognize a community activist, Mr. Henry Thorne Hen Dog Catchers program. I just saw him somewhere. Where's Hen? There he is. Hen. All right, coming up next, we have Pastor Williamson. Pastor Williamson. Is Pastor Williamson still here? And here, Ms. Goins said you were her kindergarten student. And high school. Oh, wow. You wasn't getting away from Mrs. Goins. All right, we're going to move forward. It's a civil rights and labor rights activist here. He's here. Let's give it up for Mr. Leonard Cardinale. I'm sorry. Thank you. Leonard Cardinale.
Good morning. Thanks for hanging in there. Truly a good day. My name is Leonard Cardinale. I represent We Are Nevada. It's a coalition of public employees and community partners who represent the medical people, the nurses, the police supervisors, firemen, AFL-CIO, the county teachers, the state teachers, Plan, Progress Now, and a lot of the progressive groups. And we're all together. We have about 300,000 in our membership, and I'm here today just to say a few words. So thank you for giving me a few moments to speak. There was a time in this great country of ours when men and women of certain color skin or certain religion or a certain way of life were treated as if they were less of a human being than certain other human beings. There were groups of people that believed they were the entitled ones, and they believed the Constitution of the United States was there for them and their friends and families and only applied to their way of life. More than 5 decades ago, as the world watched and as the rest of the country watched, how did the racists, the oppressors, the so-called privileged justify treating their fellow brothers and sisters, their fellow humankind, as if they were so indispensable they were not entitled to even the most basic human rights? The right to free speech, the right to due process, the right to choose their own religion, and more importantly, our basic human inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today we celebrate the March on Washington. 50 years ago, one of the greatest civil rights workers, leaders in America's short history, Martin Luther King Jr., gathered the masses on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to show the world the vision of the future. His dream for all human beings and for all mankind. He was truly a gifted man, and he inspired me very much. He's one of my favorites. I believe today that Reverend King would be proud of an America where the President of the United States is an African American, where immigration reform is a work in progress, where same-sex marriage is accepted nationwide by the more than 78% of Americans, where affordable health care will soon be available to everyone, and in America where, despite certain people's greatest efforts, racial equality is a mandate for all Americans and prejudice is no longer tolerated. Indeed, America was born from tyranny, oppression, class warfare, and the annihilation of our individual rights and freedoms. Our forefathers decided to leave their country and form a newer, better country, the United States. Our forefathers knew that we had to create a constitution. We had to be a nation of laws. And we had to elect judges to oversee those laws so that all people were secure the future of every American for all those who violate other rights and way of life. Brothers and sisters under one God with inalienable rights for all Americans. Not done yet, but I'll keep it brief. Let me tell you, there was a time when the economic downfall really crushed this country. And the people lost their jobs, and they lost their homes, and they lost their American dream. But some people didn't. The 1%, the richest and the most powerful, did not lose anything. The richest and the most powerful maintained their money, and they maintained their fortunes. And many, many public employees were laid off. In North Las Vegas alone, there's 1,000 public employees that were laid off. That means
less police services, less fire services, less services for the pools and the parks and the recreation. And I'm here today to let you know that the middle class built this country. The public workers built this country. And I know union is a bad word these days, and they say those union guys and those union leaders, but let me tell you, without unions, there would be no workers' rights. If you don't believe that, talk to a state employee. Talk to a state employee who has no union rights. They cut their pay, they cut their benefits, they gave them furlough days, and all of this was done without them agreeing to it, because they could. Union is not a bad word. Union means that you have a voice in what you earn, that a good day's work for a good day's pay, and that's fair. When you have a union representative, that means that you have a voice in how you're treated. And if they violate your civil rights, or they discriminate against you, or they retaliate against you for being someone who doesn't mind standing up for themselves, and you don't mind having a voice in your own future, then there are things that we can do to make sure that those people have to pay for what they do. Make no mistake, the attack these days is on the middle class. The richest 1% of this country wants to make sure that austerity works. Austerity means that you make deep cuts to public employees. And yeah, it looks good on paper overnight. You can save millions and millions of dollars overnight. But you know what? You know who suffers? The taxpayers. Your tax money goes so that when you call 911, a police officer shows up. When there's a fire, a fireman shows up. When there's a medical emergency, a medical person shows up. Your tax money goes for keeping those pools open and the recreation centers. Thank you. Oh, Wendy's. I stand here before you today because I have a dream. I have a dream that workers and their employers, management and labor, the elected officials and elected union leaders, Democrats and Republicans, the rich and the powerful, and the middle class can work together and resolve their difference for the betterment and the future of our great country. That's my dream for the future. My dream is the dream of our forefathers, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you, and thank you. Leonard Cardinale. And that civil rights and labor rights activist, that's still relevant here 50 years later. How is it that we're still fighting for the same thing that was fought 50 years ago? What happened? We didn't vote. That's what happened. That's why it's important to vote. Coming up next, we have the Director of Programs of the Las Vegas Urban League. Please help me welcome Onyaka Tiggart.
Are we still in the morning? Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks for bearing this heat. I just want to thank everybody. My sorority is here. I think some are still here. Delta Sigma Theta. All right, soror. Okay, I have the Las Vegas Urban League. My family's here, my co-workers, and everybody's here. Thank you all for coming. Here we stand today, 50 years later, in memory of the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in celebration for the March on Washington. As a representative of the Las Vegas Urban League, the community action agency here in Southern Nevada, I'm asking for your continued support as we march on with some of Dr. King's dreams, which leads to words like inspire, motivate, and help others recognize their strengths and potential to be great as human beings. The Las Vegas Urban League's mission is to empower the community and change lives. As the community action agency, we see the war on drugs. We see the war on poverty. We see the war on injustice. We see the economic inequality. We see the war on black crime. What are we doing about it? We support our community. We have programs for our community. We provide funds to our community. We employ our community. We educate our community. We train our community. And most of all, we love our community. We are there for our community. We serve as an outlet for many in situations of low poverty and financial crisis. That's our job, but we cannot do it alone. As a people, as a community, we must know that the fight is not over. We must move on, forwarding with our dreams by enlightening, empowering, and loving each other. As a people, as a community, we still face issues surrounding our civil rights and our voting rights. We still have to be careful in our own neighborhoods, but the march for our freedom lives on. The march for our respect lives on. The march for our voice lives on. We still have to fight for our votes and the right to be heard. The community spoke when we elected our president, Barack Obama, not once, but twice. Let us not forget the struggle. Let us not let the work of our ancestors be in vain. Let the march continue on. Let the fight continue on. Be strong. Speak up. Speak out. As a community, it is time for us to stand up and march again. From this day forward, repeat after me. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. does live on.
One more time for Onyaka Tiggart, Director of Programs, Las Vegas Urban League. Coming up next is a poet, Mr. Darrell Adams. Is Darrell Adams? Where's Darrell Adams? Come on up here. Darrell Adams. Show him some love. He's going to share some poetry with us. We have a few more people and we're going to conclude. And we're doing good on time because we're going to be here till noon. But here's Mr. Darrell Adams.
Greetings, black family. How's everybody doing today? Good. I'll make sure that I'll be in and out. I know it's getting pretty warm out here, so I'll make sure that I'm quick, and hopefully I'll be able to bless your spirits. All right, first and foremost, giving honor unto God the Father, Yeshua the Christ, and the Holy Spirit. On this most momentous occasion of the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, it is imperative that as black males that we come together in our pursuit of knowledge of self and self-determination in order to eradicate the genocidal spirit which seeks to decimate us as a people. Thus, my poem today is simply entitled, Brothers Stop Dying. Can we bow our heads in reverence to our Creator? Father, please help us stop falling victim to this trickery, virtual lies displaying distorted images for us to receive with subliminal messages that we be deceived. Then poverty starves our souls. In a world of materialism, our souls have grown cold. Living in a world of gleam. Father, forgive us, for we have nightmares dreaming of having things throughout our black communities, and we've been deprived and divided, so we'd have no black unity. So young black brothers keep dying in these streets, in this Las Vegas, Louisiana, California, DC, Chicago heat, looking for jewels and big body cars, but can't afford to eat. Pride condemns us to compete. We're dying, trying to attain. Help us, Father, please. Help us that we not murder each other anymore. On these streets, there's no peace, leaving us hardcore. Our souls are weary and sore, dying over things that our souls can't afford. we've become the end product of a corrupt society. To them, our souls are only a liability, and yet we oblige. Dying closed casket represented in death by a picture collage. Dying over lives. Father, what has become of our lives? Death is shown everywhere, rendering us dehumanized. Pride got us running toward death full stride, making enemies amongst ourselves. The sins of this nation got us dying, looking for our wealth. Your sheep have been strayed to the left, swayed. Now upon us, death has crept. Belief in black unity is strained. Brothers are killing brothers like it ain't no thing. Genocide falling down upon us like acid rain. Must our mothers continue to mourn in such grievous pain? Father, please comfort their souls as they are forced to keep crying. And please touch my young brothers that we stop dying. Ashe, Hotel, job blessings, amen, D.A. Soldier.
Mr. Darrell Adams. And we must support each other's businesses and everything in our efforts, especially the young people. And speaking of supporting business, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Rodney Cardwell. He's the owner of The Wash. That's a car wash that's right over here on the corner of MLK. Coming up next, we have the Clark County Democratic Black Caucus grassroots political activism representative, Ms. Leisa Moseley.
Thank you so much for hanging in there. Before I get started, I want to draw attention to the Clark County Democratic Black Caucus table. If you have not registered to vote, I know Craig mentioned it earlier, but we have a specialist under the tent that's registering ex-felons to vote. If you are an ex-felon and you think you cannot vote, you are wrong. Please see Roosevelt over here at the Clark County Democratic Black Caucus table and retain your right to vote. It is a civil right that you have. Just because you have broken the law, if you have paid your dues and done your time, you are eligible to vote. So please see Roosevelt under the tent. One more thing, the Clark County Black Caucus, in conjunction with the churches of Southern Nevada, Power 88, Our Own Voices, the Sentinel Voice, the Las Vegas Urban League, the NAACP, the National Congress of Black Women, Young Black Minds, we are hosting in